Hello and welcome to our virtual Truman Scholarship webinar. My name is Jennifer Bess. I'm Director of National Fellowships in National Fellowships and Scholar Programs. And we are happy to be able to share this information with you remotely and hoping that you are all doing well and staying safe. This webinar is going to cover some basic information about the Truman Scholarship, what it is, what the eligibility requirements are, what the application process looks like, all the pieces and parts of the application process, why we think you ought to apply, next steps, and more. So please hold on. This will be about 30 minutes long. Hopefully it will answer a lot of questions that you might have, but hopefully it will also inspire some more and help you understand why we think the Truman Scholarship is such a valuable application experience. I'd like to just give a shout out to Novella, holding our 25 years of success sign. Our office has been around for 25 years and we have had 10 Truman Scholars in that time. We are very excited about opportunities that exist for you all to become number 11. So let's go. What is the Truman Scholarship? So the Truman Scholarship was created as a memorial for Harry S. Truman, former President Harry S. Truman. It is specifically for people who plan a career in public service, very broadly defined, and it is awarded to college juniors. It gives you $30,000 that you can use over 2 years for graduate school. It's one of the few awards that you can use for pretty much any kind of grad degree as long as you can connect it to public service. So it can be used for master's degrees, it can be used for doctorate, MD degrees, it can be used for law degrees, lots of different things. It also includes a leadership week of programming in Liberty, Missouri with all other Truman Scholars in your cohort. That usually happens in May. And it also offers the opportunity to have a summer internship in DC the summer after you graduate from undergrad. Also, finally, it gives you lifelong membership into the the Truman family, which is a not unimpressive network of people who are committed and passionate about public service. So that's not a small perk, I would say. In order to be eligible to apply for the Truman, you need to be a full-time college junior, and they establish that by expected graduation date, not by number of credit hours. Also, if you are planning to graduate from undergrad in 3 years, you are eligible to apply in your 3rd year of undergrad. So still as a junior, but technically your last year. Those are 2 options. You have to be planning a career in public service, as I mentioned. That is really largely defined by you. It's often some form of governmental work, but there is a wide range of careers that they are interested in supporting. You definitely need to have an extensive record of public and community service. So they want to see that you have begun to do the things that you care about and working your way towards solving some of the world's problems. We're also really interested in your leadership potential. We want to see how you have defined leadership, how you have shown that in various roles. That does not mean that you have to have had a named titled position. You don't have to have been president of 8,000 organizations. We just want to know that you are able to be a leader. They're looking for academics that put you in the top quarter of your class. I would say on our campus, usually at least a 3.6 or higher, more likely 3.7, 3.8, but there is a little bit of range. You need to have the kind of academic background that prepares you to be successful in the graduate program that you intend to pursue as a Truman Scholar. That's the basic point. You need to be a US citizen or a US national from American Samoa. Those are the only 2 things. And you have to be nominated by the University of South Carolina. So we are allowed to nominate 4 students every year for Truman. So we have an on-campus process, which is going to be a large part of what we talk about in this webinar today. What is Truman looking for? So their catchphrase is change agents. They're looking for people who have shown themselves to be and show promise of being a change agent in the future. And the way that they figure that out is they look at your public service record and your commitment. You know, how long have you been doing various things? What is your particular area of concern or focus, and how have you shown yourself to be active in that area? They look at your leadership record, obviously. You know, where have you helped lead others to do things that will help make the world a better place? And they're looking at the appropriateness of the proposed graduate study that you have in your application, given what you say your long-term goals are. So what that match between what you want to do and the grad degree you think will get you there. Also looking at the overall quality of your application. So there's a lot of writing in a Truman application. So they're looking for consistency across your responses. There's a lot of different questions, and we really work with you to help you kind of get the thread that runs through all your application materials. Have good and succinct writing. There are a lot of really tight character counts in a Truman application. For the campus process, you don't have to be quite as concerned by those or constrained by those, but you need to be close. And then as the process goes on, if you're nominated, there will be a lot of refining of your writing. You also are judged on how clear your motivation for current public service is. Do we understand where you're coming from? Have you shown us that this is not just a passing fancy? Do you have this commitment to this long term? Why should you apply? So to be honest, the Truman application is probably one of the more rigorous, if not the most rigorous, scholarship applications that exist for undergrads, but that makes it hugely beneficial to go through. Every year we have students who are nominated, or even who are not nominated, who just apply on campus, who do not become scholars, but who talk about how valuable the opportunity was to sit down and really put on paper what it is that they care about and where they're headed. So I'm going to give you a lot of different reasons that you should think about applying and spend the time to put together an application. So Truman is really a process of self-examination. You need to know who you are and where you're headed in order to be able to communicate that effectively and convince people to invest in you and your education. So it's not an application that you can put together in just a couple of days. It really is a process, and it's going to take you asking yourself a lot of difficult questions, and we're going to ask you some tough questions as well. But that process of self-examination is immensely valuable to you both now and going forward. It enables you to learn how to clarify and communicate your long-term goals. We'll get into the application in a minute in terms of the questions that they ask, but Truman ultimately asks you to forecast kind of far into your future, where when you are, a current sophomore about to be junior, you may have not thought about exactly where you want to be, or you may have thought about where you want to be totally long-term, but not all the steps between where you are now and where that goal is. So this process helps you clarify that and learn how to explain it to people in a pretty succinct way. You certainly will establish faculty connections. You'll work with faculty on our campus selection committee. You'll be asking faculty most likely for your recommendations. And so talking with others about who you are and where you're going, they'll give you some insight and perhaps extra suggestions or new things to think about, new directions to go in that you would not otherwise have encountered. You will learn to take constructive criticism. This application process involves a lot of feedback, both from people in our office and the faculty on the committee. It is all given with love, all with the purpose of making you as strong an applicant as possible. So the ability to take the advice and understand where it's coming from is a skill that is pretty much only learned through the actual process of doing it. So look forward to that. You'll have a head start on considering your graduate school options and your career path. Like I said, most current sophomores, future juniors are not thinking this far ahead in this much detail. So you are going to be very well prepared for your junior and senior year looking at your future. The Truman application is very commonly a springboard for other competitions as well as graduate school applications. So all the material that you will create for this application is yours to then use as you can in future applications. And we certainly have had many Truman scholars and applicants successfully turn their application materials into graduate school acceptances and other fellowship competition wins. Then the last bullet point is we do hope that you become a Truman Scholar. But please believe me when I say that even though most students who apply do not become Truman Scholars, they still benefit greatly from the process, and they do tell us that every year, okay? So all those are reasons why you might want to consider investing your time in the Truman Scholarship application. So this crazy application, what does it look like? It starts off with some pretty basic information about where you're from, the kinds of activities that you're involved in. They allow you to go back as far as high school in some cases. There's different categories of activities they want you to describe, so public service activities, government activities, jobs. They want you to talk about any awards that you've won. There's space to list out a lot of these different options. Sometimes students have a hard time figuring out which slot to put things in. That's part of why we're here. So best way to start is just have a list of all the stuff that you have done, and then we can help you figure out which category to put them in. And the focus of the application are these 7 big questions, okay? So the first question, and they're all, I can't remember word count, where it's word and character counts confuse me, but I think they're about 200 to 300 words each. So the first question is, describe an example of your leadership. And so, as I mentioned, this does not mean that you have to have been president or vice president of a particular organization, but it does, the reason they ask this question is to get at what your definition of leadership is, and then how you have demonstrated that. That's often a helpful construction for that answer, is to start off by saying, you know, a good leader does X, or a good leader is Y. And then the rest of your answer shows how you have done that thing, okay? If you don't define leadership in that answer, then the reader can fill in any definition of leadership that they want to, and that your answer may or may not fit what their preconceived idea of leadership is. So you want to kind of shortcut that and give them a definition and then show how you fit that. You want that to be a pretty recent example of leadership. For most of these, you don't want to go back to high school except in the activities list. You want to have stuff that's going on currently in college. The second question is, describe a recent meaningful public service activity. That may be completely unrelated to your leadership example, and that's fine. The key pieces with this to keep in mind are, they ask about meaningful public service. So you want to make sure that there is some indication as to why this experience was important to you. And then you also want to make sure that you're thinking through the nuances between public service and community service. I'm not going to define those for you, but they're 2 different words. And so consider, I would say consider the scope of what the service is when you're trying to figure out if something was a public service. The third big question, what is the problem or need of society that you want to address in your career? So this is the big picture, right? What is the issue that you are concerned about that you want to be a change agent for in the world, okay? And they want you to quantify it. Tell me how bad this problem is, okay? And so you can go into detail, you can have some statistics in there, you know, you want to show why this is a problem that you want to address. You don't have to solve it in that, you don't have to say how you're going to do that really. And it can be a really big, complicated problem. That's fine. They're going to ask about your proposed graduate program, and this includes a specific school. So you don't just want to say, I want to earn an MD. You say, I want to earn an MD at Emory because XYZ. And the reason you do that is they want you to show that you have started looking at programs and that you have a good idea of the specific things a particular school offers to you that might be useful in your situation. So is the school located in a particular area that would give you access to populations that you want to work with? Are they known for being at the forefront of whatever issue it is that you are trying to address? Give them some reasons why you have chosen that particular graduate program and why it's the perfect one for you to go to. Please note, Truman does not hold you to this, right? You're applying for this as a junior. You have not yet applied to grad school. It's not as if you're a Truman Scholar, they will only give you the money to go to this program. That's not the case. But they want to see that you have done some research and legwork and figured out what a good option might be. Then they ask, so if that's the grad program you do, what do you want, what kind of job do you want to have right after you finish grad school? What's going to make the most sense for you? Then they ask a question about 5 to 7 years after that, what kind of job do you want to have? And so these are opportunities to really think big, you know, think about what kind of position do you really want to have in your career that will enable you to make change the way that you want to. The folks at the Truman Foundation often talk about those 2 questions as being a way for you to demonstrate that you understand power, right? You understand who has the power to do the kinds of changes that you want to make, and how can you get yourself into the situations where you will be able to have that power. Oftentimes it's easier to start with the long-term goal, the 5 to 7, 10 years out goal, say this is the job I want to have, and then work backwards. And say if that's the job I want to have in 7 years, what job do I need to have before that in order to get there? And then what kind of graduate degree do I need to get that initial job? So you might want to work backwards on those 3 questions. And then the final big question is that, is there any additional information you want the Truman Committee to know? Never leave that question blank. I'm just going to tell you that. But there's no right or wrong answer as to what goes in that. Some people have really personal things that they share. Other people have more sort of, not academic, but you know, various things that they're going to put in there. I think the most helpful way to think about what goes in additional information, there's 2 options. One would be, before you start your application, you make yourself a list of the 3 to 5 things that you want a Truman Committee to know about you. Most of those should fit into the various pieces of the application, but there might be one left over that didn't have room. That's what goes into the additional information. So that's one way to do it. The second way is to consider the additional information answer as the space where you can clarify your motivation for the particular need of society or problem that you want to address, right? What is it in your life that has made this issue the important issue for you, okay? Either of those 2 things can work. Or a third way, you know, it is additional information. So what do you want them to know about you? The final piece of the application, which is a significant component of the application, but is not one that we require for campus nomination because it's kind of tricky, is a policy proposal. So ultimately, if you are a nominee from the university, you will have to write a 500-word policy proposal that addresses some small slice of the need of society that you wanted to address in your career back in that answer, that question earlier. For the campus process, for nomination, we don't ask for that because most people do not have experience writing a policy proposal, and so we don't want it to be a barrier to your application. But do be thinking about what an issue might be. You know, is there a smaller piece of the big problem that you think you could address, say, locally, that might be useful? So be thinking about it, but you don't have to write that yet. The campus process in general, we have a mid-October deadline. I think right now it's tentatively set at October 13th. From the campus applications, the committee will select students to interview, and then they will have an interview. You'll have an individual interview with the committee in early November. So those interviews are really important because the committee is looking to pull more information out of you that may or may not have been in your application, seeing how you handle yourself in a committee, because nationally the Truman interviews are notorious for being a little challenging, I would say, in a positive way, right? They really want to push you to make sure that you are the kind of person that will be able to make changes as a change agent. So you have those interviews, and the campus committee will select up to 4 nominees. You don't have to select 4, but it's then if you're nominated, you'll be assigned to work with a smaller number of committee members as mentors over the course of the rest of the fall semester. We'll also, we're planning on having a series of workshops for the nominees. One certainly that will focus on policy proposals and how to write those, how to think about them. We usually have a session on leadership and how to sort of contemplate putting together that answer. And then we usually have one that's about public speaking and interviewing tips. We're going to try and do practice interviews on campus in the fall, and then probably in the spring if you are a finalist. And then your final application, everything totally clean and ready to go, is submitted nationally to Truman at the end of January. Finalists are announced usually in February, with interviews in March, and then scholars are announced in early to mid-April. Okay, so it's a long process. Crafting a strong application. Really, so you need to think about what is the story you want to tell, right? This is your story. It is a narrative. You are trying to convince the Truman Committee that they want to invest in you because you are someone who is going to make the world a better place in your career in some area. So you're telling a story. There's lots of pieces, right? And so your application needs to fit together. You need to reflect on where you've come from, where you are right now, and where you want to go, and think critically about that. How have you been shaped? What kinds of advantages or disadvantages have you had? How have those shaped you? This is the time to brag about yourself, okay? This is not the time to be shy. We're happy to help you with that. Oftentimes we find students don't think that the things they do are remarkable because they're just the things that you do. But I'm here to tell you that we have some pretty remarkable students at USC, and we would like to help you figure out how to best convey that specialness in your application. So in terms of the story you want to tell, what is the overall message? What is the thread that needs to run throughout your application? And so you need, while your answers can be about various things, you know, your leadership answer and your public service answer can be very different, but they both need to build towards whatever the overall theme or message or thread of your application is, okay? So your application as a whole has to hang together, even though the parts should be distinct from each other. Please make sure that you use active and not passive voice, right? You are an actor. You are someone who does things. You are a change agent. And do be aware that grammar and syntax and punctuation all matter. We certainly will help you clean some of that up if you're nominated, but you want to be able to communicate as clearly as possible so that people will understand what you're trying to say. And then finally, you know, we use this word authentic all the time, but we really do want you to be authentic. I don't want you to tell me what you think I want to hear in a Truman application. I want to know who you are and what is important to you and what has shaped you and what motivates you and, you know, what you want to do to change the world. So don't try and find the right answer. Tell me your answer, okay? Easy to say, hard to do. Okay, you're interested, so what do you do next for Truman? Ideally, you would talk with one of us, a National Fellowship Advisor. I'll have a slide on here about how to get to that in just a second. But we're happy to do conversations, virtual conversations, phone, Microsoft Teams, Skype, whatever. But really, that's probably the most beneficial thing, is to really sit down and talk through your ideas with us, and we can tell you if this seems realistic or not, or a good use of your time. I want you to review the Truman website, especially the scholar profiles and resources. I'm going to attempt to switch us over to that shortly. Bear with me. But if I can't, or that gets messed up, you know, truman.gov is the website, and they have a lot of helpful resources. I would ask that you fill out an intent to apply form. This is a form that our office sponsors, which helps us keep track of the people who tell us that they are hoping to apply in the fall. I'll tell you where that is in a second as well. And then once you complete intent to apply, if you select Truman, it's going to link you to another form. There's a preliminary Truman application, and that's to help you get started thinking about the answers to some of these questions on the application. They're just preliminary things. We hope to share them with the Truman committee so that they can already start to give you some ideas or ask questions or give you some feedback as you start to work on your application over the summer, which is key. Okay, so the students who wait until the fall to start Truman are not as successful as the students who work over the summer on it. It is a long process, and we are more than happy to meet with you and review drafts. I'd love to see multiple drafts of Truman from students over the summer, so please, please, please try and do that. We have fellowship peer mentors, who are people who have been previous Truman finalists and winners, so happy to connect you. They used to be able to take you to coffee, but since none of us are on campus, they might just be doing a virtual coffee chat with you, but we're happy to connect you with our recent peer mentors. And then your final step would be to submit your application by the campus deadline, which I think I mentioned is most likely going to be October 13th this year. All right, so notable Truman Fellowship recipients, just in case you were wondering, there's people from all over who have been Truman scholars, part of the Truman family. They could become part of your network, and we hope that you will join them. This is a picture of Bennett Lunn, who was our most recent Truman scholar. I went with him to Liberty, Missouri for that leadership week, and this is us at the replica of the Oval Office at the Truman Library. All right, I'm gonna see if I can manage to get us to the Truman website, because I want to show you where some of these things are. Here's the Truman website, truman.gov, and you can see they're closed because of COVID-19. But up here under candidates, this is where I want you to look. You don't need a faculty rep locator. That's me, that's us, that's our office, you know us. They already have information up about the 2021 competition, so you want to click on that. Notes to candidates has deadlines and things. The guidance for letters of recommendation, I didn't mention this. So you do need 3 letters of recommendation for Truman, but they're very specific in terms of what they need to cover. So one letter needs to be someone who can talk about your leadership example, the specific one that you write about in the answer to the leadership question. One letter needs to be about your commitment to public service, and they need to be able to write about the public service example that you use in that essay. The third letter is an academic letter. That's the only one that has to come from faculty, and that needs to come from someone who can talk about your fit with the graduate program that you are. Okay? So those are three kind of very different types of letters. We're happy to talk with you and strategize with you about who to ask for any of those, but just know that that's a peculiarity of the Truman Scholarship. The sample application forms, this is what we tend to use for our campus process. Down here at the bottom, you can download the sample application as a PDF or a doc. You don't need the policy stuff right now because we're going to do that later. Those are starting points. They may or may not be the easiest documents to use. Once you are nominated, we give you access to the online application. And so this is where this is the character limits that they have for those. But I wouldn't worry too much about that for the campus process. Back to 2011, that's too long ago, 2021. Candidate instructions, and then the bulletin of information that you always want to check, because that's the official rules of Truman. So you are responsible for reading those. We know them pretty well, but make sure that you have checked those out as well. They have how to become a Truman Scholar. So they have some general requirements, important dates, application, preparing application. I would actually say in this competition, what do they have? Advice and guidance. They have tips for preparing an effective personal statement, suggestions to cancel from past pursuit. So the sample of effective and ineffective responses, this is useful, but I don't want you to take it as gospel, right? So it's helpful to have, to see the comments on an ineffective versus an effective answer, but don't think that your answers have to look exactly like the effective ones, okay? There's no boilerplate, specific outline that every Truman has to follow at all. But this, if you get stuck and you want to see like, how on earth do I figure out how to talk about leadership, here are some examples that you can look at. Yeah, so those are some helpful resources. It's not a bad idea to look at did they get rid of the 2020? They got the list of finalists. You can look at last year's Truman Scholars. If you want to read the little bios, that might give you a sense of the kinds of people that are chosen as Truman Scholars. They are from all over. So typically there's about 60 Truman Scholars chosen every year, roughly one per state, and then some states like California and Texas have a couple instead of just one. And then they also have candidates like from Puerto Rico, American Samoa, things like that. So roughly there's one per state, and it's your state of residence. That's who you're up against, not your school, on the location of your school. So most of our applicants on campus are from South Carolina or the area, and so everyone's up in the same basic region, and so interviews are in Atlanta. Anyway, so just familiarize yourself. The website has a lot of information. It can be a little tricky to navigate, so hopefully I find a couple of important things for you. So please familiarize yourself with the Truman website. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. I think it's working. Oh, we went all the way back to the beginning. Okay. So in terms of how to find us, so this is our website. We are National Fellowship Advising. On this website, if you go to National Fellowships, you can click on that, and then there will be a toolbox that you can click on, and the intent to apply form is found in that toolbox. We'll also try and send that link out, as well as have other information that we will send to you along with this webinar. But that's the quickest way to get to the intent to apply form. And then, as I said, if you select Truman on that form, it'll kick you out at the end of it to the Truman preliminary application for you to fill out as well. So those would be good next steps. Here's how to sign up with us. Use Navigate. We're happy to talk via phone, Microsoft Teams, Skype. Also, Dr. David Simmons in anthropology, he is the chair of our Truman committee, and he is more than happy to talk with any of you at any point in time about Truman. is something that we all really enjoy spending time with, so you're not a bother. I'll make sure that his kind of information is shared with you as well. I do want to mention that. And that's it. So this is me, Jennifer Best. That's who's been talking at you. But we hope that this has given you an overview of Truman, some ideas as to what the application entails and the value of applying. And we are here to answer any questions and talk with you more about your interest. And we really hope that we can talk more with you soon and that you will apply for the Truman. So thanks so much for listening to this. And I look forward to talking with you soon. Thanks very much. Bye.